I still remember the way the sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows that Sunday morning, painting the old wooden pews with colors that didn't belong in a world full of betrayal. It was supposed to be a regular day, worship, coffee hour, maybe a lazy lunch with Clara afterward. But nothing about that day ended up ordinary. Not even close. Clara was my girl. Or at least I thought she was. We'd been together for almost 2 years. She sang in the church choir, always wore her hair up in a messy bun, and had a thing for quoting Bible verses when we argued. "Love is patient, love is kind," she'd say, usually when she was trying to win an argument by sounding holier than me. I loved her anyway. Or maybe I loved the version of her I built up in my head, the one who didn't lie and smile while doing it. We'd met in youth group when we were both still in high school. I was the quiet one who came for the snacks and stayed for the sense of peace I couldn't find anywhere else. Clara was different. She took her faith seriously. She'd practically run that place with her wide smile and soft voice. Everybody loved her. Even Pastor Tim. Especially Pastor Tim. I didn't see it at first. I didn't want to. Looking back, all the signs were there. The way she always volunteered to help him after service, even when we had plans. The late-night calls she'd pretend were from her cousin. And the way she always talked about how God uses people in mysterious ways, whenever I questioned anything. That Sunday, I sat in the third pew from the front like I always did. Clara was up there singing, her voice like honey and fire. Pastor Tim gave his sermon, all about temptation and forgiveness, which now feels more like a confession than a lesson. I didn't realize it then, but while I was bowing my head in prayer, thinking about what ring I might someday buy her, she was already gone from me, already locked in sin with a man of God behind God's own altar. After the service, she came down the steps, radiant, smiling. She leaned over and kissed my cheek like she always did, and I swear I could feel her lips tremble just a little. Like guilt had finally caught up to her skin. "Let's go get lunch," she said. But we didn't. Because on our way out of the chapel, I heard it. "Caught them in the back, I swear on my life," whispered Mrs. Henderson to another lady from the altar guild. Her and the pastor, Lord forgive them. They didn't see me standing there. Didn't know that my world just split wide open like the cracked tile under my feet. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling fan, its blade spinning slow, like the thoughts in my head. I tried to think of any reason not to believe it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, maybe it was just gossip, but deep down I knew. I texted Clara the next day. "We need to talk." She answered right away. "Dinner at my place?" I said okay, but I already knew this wasn't going to be about dinner. It was going to be about truth, and hurt, and maybe finally setting fire to the fantasy I'd been clinging to for far too long. She cooked lasagna, her mom's recipe. Tried to smile and act like everything was okay. I didn't touch a bite. "You want to say something, don't you?" she asked finally, her voice small. I nodded. "Tell me the truth, Clara. About you and Pastor Tim." Silence. Then, a long sigh, like she'd been holding her breath for days. "It only happened once," she whispered. "It didn't mean anything." I stood up. The chair scraped the floor like it was wincing along with me. "Once is enough. You don't understand, he's been helping me through some stuff." "Helping you? Or using you?" She got angry then. Not guilty. Not sorry. Just angry. "You're not perfect either, you know. You don't make me feel special like he does. He listens to me." I shook my head, grabbing my coat. "You cheated in church, Clara. Behind the altar. And you still want me to feel bad for you?" She tried to block the door. "I made a mistake. But I want us to move on. I want to marry you." That stopped me. "Marry you?" I repeated, as if saying it might help it make more sense. You sleep with a priest, lie to me, and then ask me to marry you? She crossed her arms. You're really gonna say no? I looked her straight in the eye. Yeah. I am. I didn't expect her to take it well. But I didn't expect what came next either. 2 nights later, I was walking home from the gas station, just needed air, needed distance. That's when I saw them. 3 guys I'd seen hanging around Clara's house before. Big guys. The kind that laugh a little too loud and don't know how to lose a fight. One of them cracked his knuckles. You said no to Clara? I didn't even get a chance to answer before the first punch hit me square in the ribs. They didn't say much after that. Just did their job. Clara's job. They left me coughing in the dirt behind a dumpster with blood in my mouth and my heart thudding loud in my ears. But what they didn't know. That beating didn't break me. It lit something in me. Something quiet and angry. And I was going to get back at her. Not with fists. Not with fire. But with something far worse. Getting beat up by 3 of your girlfriend's buddies behind a liquor store isn't something you just walk away from, physically or mentally. My ribs felt like they were folding in on themselves. Every breath came with a wince. My face looked like I'd lost a fight with a car door. But the worst part? It wasn't the pain. It was knowing Clara sent them. She didn't call. Didn't text to ask if I was okay. Didn't even pretend to care. I guess when someone breaks the vows they never even made, checking on the guy they had goons rough up isn't exactly at the top of the list. So I laid there that night on my old twin bed, holding a frozen bag of peas to my jaw and thinking about how far gone she really was. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was humiliated. Everyone in that church saw us as the golden couple. We prayed together, held hands during sermons, even taught the kids Sunday class once. Now, I was the fool who got betrayed in the house of God and beat down in a back alley for saying no. She wanted me to marry her. Probably to keep up appearances. Probably so she could still have Pastor Tim on the side while I smiled in family photos and pretended not to know better. And when I refused, she sicked her lapdogs on me like I was some threat to her happy ending. But I wasn't gonna play victim anymore. It started small. Subtle. I wasn't gonna go out there swinging or calling the cops. No. I was gonna take my time. Pick my moment. Let her feel the unraveling. If she thought she could use people, men of God, me, those meatheads, then she needed to know what it felt like to lose control of a situation one thread at a time. First, I went back to church. Bruised up and stitched with bandages, I walked right through those double doors the next Sunday and sat in my usual pew like nothing had changed. Pastor Tim's eyes widened when he saw me. Clara flinched mid-note during the hymn. That was the first crack in her perfect little mask. After the service, she came rushing over. "Oh my God, what happened to you?" she asked, voice dripping with fake concern. I looked her in the eye. "3 of your friends happened. You sent them." She blinked. "What are you talking about? I would never." "Save it. You lied once. I'm not interested in hearing you do it again." I didn't wait for her response. Just walked out, slow and steady, leaving her standing there surrounded by parishioners and staring after me like she couldn't believe I'd said it out loud. The next phase was harder. I had to think smart, not angry. So I started paying attention. Watching her. Watching him. Clara was still visiting the rectory a lot. Helping with office work, she said. I knew what that meant. I didn't need a camera to confirm it. I needed proof that would actually mean something. That's when I started talking to Natalie. Natalie was the church secretary. 62, sharp as a knife, and had a memory like a steel trap. She'd been there longer than any of us. She didn't trust Clara. Said something always felt off about how cozy she was with Pastor Tim. I asked if she'd ever seen anything strange, anything that didn't sit right. Turns out, Clara wasn't very good at hiding things from people who paid attention. She spends more time in his office than he does, Natalie said. And she locks the door. That was enough for me to take the next step. I pulled out an old notebook from high school and started keeping track. Dates, times, everything. Clara's visits. When she showed up. When she left. When Pastor Tim conveniently wasn't available for meetings. I didn't need a full-blown investigation, I just needed patterns. Something I could use. Then, I found my golden opportunity. The church was planning a special fundraiser. A big night, music, food, testimonies. They'd even be projecting photos and videos on the wall behind the altar. Clara was helping put it all together. Of course she was. She had her hand in everything. So I volunteered too. Natalie gave me the okay to help with setup since she'd hurt her wrist. That gave me access to the equipment, projectors, speakers, even the church laptop where they stored most of the video files. Clara didn't know I had the password. But Natalie did. And she trusted me more than she trusted her. One night, 2 days before the fundraiser, I stayed late to organize cables. While I was there, I dug into the folders on the laptop. Pastor Tim wasn't the tech-savvy type. He left everything on the desktop. And there it was, security cam footage from the church office hallway. I scrubbed through the files, and sure enough, found what I was looking for. It was grainy, black and white, but clear enough. Clara entering the pastor's office. A few seconds later, the door locking behind her. 30 minutes pass. An hour. 2. They leave together. His collar's crooked. Her lipstick smeared. I didn't save the video. Didn't copy it. Just watched it, stared at the screen until I felt sick. I didn't need to post it or send it anywhere. What I needed was timing. The fundraiser came. The church was packed. Clara wore a white dress like she was trying to look angelic. Pastor Tim gave the opening prayer. I sat in the back with a USB stick in my hand, nerves bouncing off the inside of my skull. Natalie leaned in. "You sure about this?" I nodded. "It's time." She patted my arm. "He's hurt more people than you know." I waited until it was Clara's turn to speak. She walked up, smiled, talked about grace and redemption, and all the things people say when they're trying to pretend they haven't wrecked somebody's life. Then, I slipped out and into the tech booth. Unplugged the scheduled slideshow. Slotted in mine. Right as she said the words, "I believe God puts people in our lives for a reason." The footage played. Behind her, clear as day. The pastor's door. Clara entering. The lock. The long, long wait. And them leaving. The crowd gasped. A woman screamed. Someone knocked over a chair. Clara turned around, saw it, and dropped the mic. Her face drained of color. Pastor Tim stood up like he might try to run, but there was nowhere to go. I didn't stick around for the aftermath. I walked out of the church, the cool night air hitting me like a cleansing rain. For the first time in weeks, I felt light. Not happy. But whole. Clara had tried to bury me under lies, fists, and guilt. But I rose from it. Not with violence. Not with revenge for revenge's sake. With truth. That was enough for now. I didn't go back to church the next Sunday. Didn't go the one after that either. By then, half the congregation had reached out, some with sympathy, some with curiosity, and a few just craving gossip. But I kept my distance. After what happened that night, I didn't need to be part of the cleanup crew. I'd said what needed saying without speaking a word. And as far as I was concerned, my job was done. But even when you think you've burned the bridge, sometimes the smoke follows you. It started with a knock at my door. I was in the middle of trying to eat soup through a sore jaw when the banging started. I figured it might be someone from the church, maybe the board, maybe even Natalie checking in. But when I opened it, there she was. Clara. She looked nothing like the woman I used to love. Her makeup was smeared, and her hair, usually so perfect, was a tangled mess. Her white dress, the same one from the fundraiser, was wrinkled and stained like she hadn't taken it off since that night. "You destroyed me," she said. Her voice cracked like she was holding something back, but it wasn't tears. It was rage. I leaned on the doorframe and looked her over. "You destroyed yourself." I just held up the mirror. "You think this makes you a hero? Exposing me in front of everyone?" "I didn't expose you, Clara. I exposed the truth. That's all." She scoffed. "You couldn't take being rejected, so you had to humiliate me." That part hit strange. Like my brain stumbled over her words. "Rejected? Clara, I turned you down. You wanted me to marry you." Her eyes narrowed. "Because I loved you. Because I wanted to fix things. You wanted to bury things. Bury your guilt under a pretty little ceremony. You didn't want marriage, you wanted silence." Her face flushed, but she didn't argue that point. She just stared. For a long time. Like she was trying to find some version of me she could still manipulate. When that didn't work, she smiled. But it wasn't kind. It was the kind of smile you give right before setting a fire. "You think you're safe?" she asked quietly. "You think people still believe you're the victim?" I tilted my head. "They saw the video." She leaned in. "And I've already told everyone you edited it." That gave me pause. Just for a second. "And you know what?" she continued, her voice calm now, too calm. "Some of them believe me. Some think you broke into the church, cut together fake footage to ruin a man of God out of jealousy." I felt a flicker of something, not fear, not quite. But a recognition. This girl, this woman I gave 3 years of my life to, didn't just want to escape blame. She wanted vengeance. "I didn't edit anything," I said flatly. "Prove it," she whispered. Then she turned and walked away. By that point, Pastor Tim had been placed on temporary leave. The elders released a statement full of vague church speak, moral failings, breach of spiritual trust, and so on. But they never named Clara. They let her slink back into the shadows, untouched by any real fallout. And she used it. She started spreading rumors. Not just about me being a liar, but being dangerous. Unstable. She told folks I'd threatened her. Said I was obsessed and violent. That I'd been stalking her for months. And with the bruises from her friends still healing on my body, she painted the story just right. Look what he probably did to himself, just to make me look bad. It worked better than I thought it would. People I'd known for years stopped talking to me. My old youth group mentor wouldn't answer texts. Even Natalie, sweet, sharp Natalie, told me in a hushed tone over the phone, "They're saying things I know aren't true, but it's becoming a mess. Did you tell them about the footage? They don't want to hear it. They say if it wasn't shown again or backed up, it must have been fake." I realized then. Clara was winning the long game. And I had to stop her again. So I did what any desperate, cornered, beaten-up boy would do when the truth wasn't enough. I went digging. Clara had always kept journals. Not spiritual ones either, those were for show. Her real ones, the ones she actually wrote in, were stashed in her old apartment. I'd seen them before when we used to date. Leather-bound, neat handwriting, full of her secrets. And for some reason, maybe pure pride, she'd never thrown them out. I remembered her new apartment had the same landlord. So I asked him one day if I could get back some of my old boxes I left in the shared basement. Said I used to live with her briefly and had stuff she said she tossed. He shrugged, didn't ask questions, and let me in. I searched that basement top to bottom. And sure enough, in a battered plastic tub labeled Miscellaneous, Clara, I found what I was looking for. The red one. Her 2024 journal. I flipped through it, heart pounding. At first, just daily rants. Complaints about people in church. Gossip. But then I found the gold. I asked him to marry me again today. He looked like he wanted to run. Probably thinks I'm just trying to make it all disappear. He's not wrong. Tim said if anyone finds out, he'll deny everything. I hate how much control he has over me. But I love what he does to me behind that locked door. I know what I did to him was wrong. But I can't have him walking around acting like he's better than me. I made some calls. Boys owe me a favor. He'll learn his place soon. Every word, every page, proof. Not digital. Not editable. Not fake. Raw, handwritten confession. I made copies. Mailed them to the church board. To Natalie. To Pastor Tim's wife. To Clara's parents. And then I burned the original. Not because I wanted to destroy it, but because I wanted her to know it was gone. Wanted her to feel that panic when she realized it wasn't in her control anymore. And sure enough, that same night, I got a text. "You're going to regret this." I didn't answer. The next morning, Clara didn't show up to church. Pastor Tim officially resigned 2 days later. By the end of the week, I started getting texts from people again. Apologies. Second thoughts. Some too little, too late. But some felt real. It wasn't a happy ending. It wasn't clean. But it was mine. I had walked through betrayal in the house of God, taken beatings from hands I never wronged, and been lied about by the woman I thought I'd spend forever with. And I was still standing. Not just as a boy from a small town. But as someone who found strength in the truth, even when nobody wanted to hear it. Even when it hurt. They say small towns forget nothing. And I'd say they're mostly right. Even after I sent out copies of Clara's journal, after the board quietly released Pastor Tim and whispers turned to apologies, the stains didn't come out easy. The folks who had ignored me at the grocery store didn't suddenly wave when they saw me again. Most just nodded, real slow, like they didn't know whether to feel sorry for me or still fear the version of me Clara had spread around. But I didn't need them to clap me on the back or throw a parade. I just needed peace. And I thought I had it. That was, until I found a dead raccoon nailed to the hood of my car one morning. Its blood painted a smile across my windshield. A smile that looked too familiar. I knew exactly who did it. Clara had a crew. Not thugs, really. More like clingy, loyal kids from her high school days who never quite grew out of her spell. She'd always known how to twist people, make them feel like she was the sun and they were lucky to catch the heat. They called themselves her circle. A dumb nickname, but it fit. They moved how she wanted, acted how she needed, and when she told them to jump, they soared. One of them, a guy named Kenny, had always had it out for me. He was the one who'd socked me in the ribs behind the church that night. So when I saw him posted up by the gas station 2 days later, flicking a lighter and laughing with his buddies, I didn't hesitate. I pulled up, rolled down the window, and said just one thing. "You're next." He stopped laughing. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't going to fight him, nah, that'd be too easy for them to twist again. But I had one thing on my side they didn't, truth. And proof. You see, Clara's journal wasn't the only thing I grabbed out of that basement tub. Tucked between old receipts and some torn-up church pamphlets, I found a flash drive. Labeled, Circle Meetings 2022 to 2024. I plugged it into my laptop that night, expecting photos or maybe sermons. Videos. Dozens of them. Clara talking in living rooms, in parking lots, in church back rooms. And in all of them, Kenny and the rest of the circle were there. They weren't just her friends. They were her foot soldiers. They'd helped her run off exes before. Stalked girls who got too close to Pastor Tim. Spread lies. Sabotaged jobs. Clara had built herself a little cult. And she was the god they bowed to. I spent a week organizing everything. Dates. Locations. Clear audio. I uploaded it all to a burner channel on YouTube, didn't even title the clips. Just tagged them quietly with things like youth group conversations and small town secrets. Then I sent the links. To the police. To a reporter 2 towns over who loved small town scandal. And, my favorite move, to Clara's new boyfriend. Yep, she had a new one. I found out from Natalie. Some out-of-towner, she said. Real estate guy. Clara's got her claws in again. I found his business email on his company website. Sent him every file with a single message. Ask her about Kenny. Then run. The fallout was quick and brutal. Kenny got arrested within the week. Turns out he had old assault charges from before. This was just the push the sheriff needed. 2 of Clara's girls skipped town. Pastor Tim's wife filed for divorce and left with their kids. The church board resigned in shame one by one as the videos exposed how long they'd turned blind eyes. And Clara? She showed up at my door again. Same knock. Same perfume. Different face. This time she wasn't angry. She was afraid. You destroyed everything, she whispered. Why couldn't you just let it go? I looked at her for a long moment. Looked past the smeared eyeliner and trembling hands. Past the beautiful girl I used to think was heaven sent. Past the lies. The beatings. The betrayal. You broke something in me, Clara, I said quietly. And I fixed it with the truth. She cried. Big, dramatic sobs. I loved you. No, I said. You loved control. You loved being worshipped. You never loved me, just how I made you feel. She reached for me. I stepped back. I hope you get help, I said. But not from me. Then I shut the door. And this time, I didn't look through the peephole after. Weeks passed. Then months. Clara left town. Some said she moved in with an aunt. Others whispered rehab. I didn't care. I started going to a different church. One where nobody knew my name, and nobody expected me to pretend I was fine when I wasn't. And slowly, I healed. Natalie kept in touch. Said she was proud of me. Said she'd never seen anyone stand that tall in the middle of so much fire. You turned your pain into purpose, she said once. I don't know if that's true. But I do know I never let myself get swallowed by the lies. I stood up. I fought back. Not with fists or fury. But with truth. And in a world full of false prophets and pretty smiles that rot from the inside out. That's worth something. It's funny how peace feels like nothing at all. No knocks at midnight. No blood on the car. No more people stopping mid-sentence when I walk into the room. Just silence. For a while, it was deafening. My body had gotten used to the tension, like background static I couldn't turn off. But now, every morning started the same, coffee, porch swing, and the sound of birds instead of rumors. I didn't know how long it would last, but I wasn't about to question it. That was when the letter came. No return address. No stamp. Just folded and stuffed under my windshield wiper one cool morning in early October. 3 words on the front. You're not done. I waited to open it until I was back inside, behind locked doors. Inside was a single piece of paper. Printed. No handwriting. They're still meeting. Not all of them left. Kenny was just the distraction. Clara's mother is still running things. She's worse than Clara ever was. And they have new targets. One is Natalie. At the bottom was a name. Ezekiel. I hadn't heard that name since Clara made me sit through one of those prayer circles. Ezekiel was the old groundskeeper. Retired early. Too quiet. Folks thought he was odd, always scribbling in a notebook, watching everything. I always thought he was just lonely. Guess I was wrong. I debated for hours. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Let the ashes stay buried. But Natalie? She stuck with me. Never judged me. Believed me when it felt like no one else did. If there was even a chance she was in danger, I had to act. So I called. He answered on the second ring. Who is this? I asked. A pause. You got the letter, didn't you? Yes. Then you know enough. I know Clara's gone. I know Kenny's in jail. I thought it was over. Ezekiel let out a dry, scratchy laugh. You burned the web. But the spider's still hiding in the walls. That night, I met Ezekiel at the old greenhouse behind the church grounds. It hadn't been used in years, overgrown and forgotten, perfect for secrets. He wore a heavy coat and boots too big for him. In his hands, that same battered notebook. He handed it to me without a word. Inside were pages filled with dates, names, and times. Meeting notes. Surveillance photos. Even receipts from local diners and motels, places where Clara's mother, Ruth, met with people. Some I recognized. Others I didn't. She picked up where Clara left off, Ezekiel said. Even worse, because now she plays the victim. Poor mother of the fallen preacher's girl. But behind closed doors? She's recruiting again. Telling folks you forged that flash drive. That you blackmailed her daughter into silence. My jaw clenched. And Natalie? I asked. She's been asking questions. Ruth doesn't like that. Last week, 2 men followed Natalie from church to her apartment. One stayed outside all night. That was all I needed to hear. The next day, I paid Natalie a visit. She looked surprised but smiled all the same. I was just about to call you, she said. Some weird stuff's been happening lately. I told her everything. The notebook. The surveillance. Ruth. All of it. By the time I finished, her face had gone pale. They're doing this all over again, she whispered. Not if we stop them first. Together, we hatched a plan. We couldn't go to the police again, not yet. Not without something rock solid. So we decided to catch Ruth in the act. Natalie volunteered to bait her. She started attending Ruth's new Bible group. Kept notes. Smiled when Ruth pretended to be a grieving mother. Pretended to be interested in restoring Clara's reputation. And sure enough, it wasn't long before Ruth invited her to a private session at her house. Ezekiel and I bugged Natalie's phone. We parked a block away the night she went in. For 2 hours, we listened. Ruth didn't talk about healing. She talked about revenge. About cleansing the town of weak-minded men. She talked about me. She even mentioned a new plan to accuse me of assault if I dared interfere again. It was all recorded. Crystal clear. We didn't go to the police this time. We went straight to the media. Natalie uploaded the audio. I added the scanned notebook pages. iZHPIL anonymously sent the files to 3 reporters and every council member in the county. Within 48 hours, Ruth's reputation crumbled. She was arrested for obstruction and conspiracy. 3 of her loyal followers were detained for stalking and harassment. And this time, no one defended her. So yeah, maybe I wasn't done. But I was free. Natalie and I started talking more after that. I wouldn't call it love, not yet, but there was something good there. Something honest. And that felt like a miracle all its own. She smiled at me one night over dinner and said, "You know, you could have walked away." "I did," I said. "But sometimes, walking away isn't enough. Sometimes you gotta clean house before the next good thing can grow." And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. You ever feel like you're walking back into a dream you had once, only now all the monsters are out in the light? That's what it felt like when I walked into St. Harmon's again, same church, same wood pews, same stained glass windows throwing color across the floor. Only now, it didn't feel sacred. It felt like a crime scene without the yellow tape. Even though Ruth had been arrested and her little circle torn apart, I couldn't shake the feeling that the place still held on to her shadow. It was like walking through fog that never quite lifts. But I wasn't there for nostalgia. I was there because Pastor Rowan, the new guy who took over, invited me back. He wanted to make peace with the past and help rebuild the community. I told him I'd think about it. Truth is, I didn't trust anything tied to that building. Not yet. But Natalie did. And that made all the difference. She believed in second chances. Always did. Even after what Clara did to me, even after the ambush, Natalie still believed this town could find its soul again. So we went together. We sat in the back row, near the exit, just in case. Pastor Rowan spoke about redemption. About grace. About truth. He didn't mention Ruth or Clara by name, but everyone knew. Everyone sat a little stiffer when he said, "When wolves dress in sheep's clothing, even the flock can become blind." And then, right there in front of the whole congregation, he looked straight at me. We must be brave enough to call out sin, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's hard. Some folks looked down. Some turned to glance at me. But I didn't flinch. I just held Natalie's hand. And for once, I felt something shift. Not just in the room, but in me. After the service, Rowan approached us. He looked younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, but there was wisdom in his eyes. Like he'd been through his own fire. "I want to thank you," he said, "for standing up when others stayed silent." "I didn't do it for the church," I replied. He smiled. "That's exactly why it mattered." He invited me to speak at the youth group next week. Said some of the kids were shaken by everything that went down, and they needed to hear what courage looked like. I told him I'd think about it. Truth is, I wasn't sure if I was ready to be someone's example. But then Natalie nudged me and said, "You've already been one." Later that night, she came over to my place with 2 milkshakes and a deck of cards. We sat on the porch, watching the fireflies blink across the yard. "I think you should do it," she said, dealing the cards out. "Tell your story. It might save someone from falling into the same trap." I looked at her, at the way the moonlight caught her smile. She wasn't just trying to help me heal anymore, she was helping the town heal too. One quiet, kind gesture at a time. "You always believe in people," I said. "Not always," she replied. "Just the ones who deserve it." That sat with me longer than the silence that followed. The next week, I showed up to the youth group. Nervous as hell, palms sweating like I was back in high school gym class. But I told my story, truthfully, plainly. I told them how love can turn into control if you're not paying attention. How kindness can be twisted into guilt. How religion, in the wrong hands, can be used like a weapon. And how I didn't see it coming because I wanted to believe the best in someone who didn't deserve it. They listened. Some with tears. Some with clenched fists. A boy in the back raised his hand and said, "My sister went through something like that." Nobody believed her. "Well," I said, "you believe her now. That counts for something." Afterward, a few of them stayed behind to talk. One girl slipped me a folded note. Said she didn't feel safe at home and didn't know who to trust. Natalie helped me get her in touch with the right people. It felt good. Not heroic. Not righteous. Just right. Clara never came back. Last I heard, she was holed up somewhere with some distant relative. Probably still blaming me for her mess. But I didn't care anymore. I used to lay awake wondering what I could have done differently. Now, I sleep. Because I did what a man's supposed to do when life punches him in the gut, stood back up, found my footing, and helped the next guy on his way up too. And Natalie? She stayed. We didn't rush it. No labels. No fireworks. Just two people scarred in different ways, helping each other heal in quiet ones. Sometimes, that's enough. Sometimes, that's everything. It had been a good couple of months. I won't lie, life started feeling normal again. The whispers in town got quieter, the stares less sharp. People started waving again when I walked past, not because they pitied me, but because they saw I didn't carry that same weight anymore. I was lighter. Natalie said it was the peace that comes when you stop trying to make sense of someone else's chaos. But deep down, I knew something was still brewing. You don't go through a storm like Ruth and Clara without checking the sky every day after. And sure enough, the clouds came creeping back. It started with a letter. No name on the envelope. No return address. Just my name in big block letters, drawn like a child trying too hard to be neat. I opened it slowly, already feeling that old tension creep into my chest. Inside, a single piece of paper. You thought this was over? You turned down the only woman who truly loved you. I gave you a chance, and you spat in my face. I won't let you win. See? Clara. Of course it was Clara. I took the letter to the sheriff, but he just sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. She's not breaking any laws with a letter, son. But I'll keep it on record. That wasn't much help. So I did what I always do when things feel heavy, I told Natalie. She read the letter, didn't say anything at first. Just stood there on my porch, looking out across the yard like she was piecing something together. I don't think she's done, she said finally. This feels like bait. Bait for what? To get your attention. To pull you back into her world. I'm not taking it. But that was a lie. Because inside, I was already tangled up in it again. A week later, someone broke into the church. Didn't steal anything. Just spray-painted 3 words across the altar in dripping red paint. He's still mine. They had to cancel Sunday service. Pastor Rowan called me personally. I hate to say it, he said, but this looks personal. I know who did it. I figured you might. You okay? I will be. But I wasn't. Not when I drove home that night and saw a figure standing in my driveway. Ruth. Clara's old friend. The one who used to tag along, keep secrets, and stir the pot when it suited her. She looked rough. Like time hadn't been kind. Hair matted. Clothes wrinkled. She held something in her hand. A photograph. Me and Natalie, sitting on the porch, playing cards. It was taken from a distance. Like someone had been watching. Clara told me to deliver a message, she said. I don't want it. She says you can still make this right. You just have to come to her. I stepped closer. Where is she? Ruth just smirked. "You'll find her when you're ready." Then she turned and walked off into the night like a ghost that didn't want to haunt anymore. Natalie wasn't surprised when I told her. "She's unraveling," she said. "And she wants to take you with her." She already tried. She failed. This time might be different. I stayed quiet for a long time. Then I said, "I think I need to end this." Natalie didn't stop me. She just said, "Then do it clean. Don't let her drag you back into the dirt." So I started digging. Not for Clara, but for leverage. I remembered the old stories about her father, the real reason she never talked about her home life. I found out he'd been arrested years ago for fraud. Some hush-hush settlement that got swept under the rug. Clara had changed her last name afterward, moved towns, started fresh. But records don't stay buried forever. Especially not when you know where to look. I made some calls. Talked to some folks who still remembered the trial. A few of them had questions of their own about Clara's behavior back then. Stories about manipulation, about fake threats she made toward people who crossed her. This wasn't her first spiral. It was just the first time someone stood up to her. I went back to the sheriff with everything I found, sealed documents, transcripts, even a voicemail from Ruth trying to warn me that Clara was planning something big. This time, the sheriff didn't sigh. This time, he leaned forward and said, "We're opening an investigation." And just like that, the power shifted. Clara thought she was the one pulling strings. But I was already cutting every cord she tried to use. The last I heard, they found her hiding out in an abandoned cabin just outside the county line. She'd been squatting there for days, talking to herself, still scribbling letters she never sent. They took her in gently. Said she didn't fight. Just asked if I was coming to see her. I didn't. Because I had nothing left to say. That night, I sat on the porch again with Natalie. The air was cool, the sky full of stars. We didn't talk much. I just leaned back and listened to the world breathe easy again. And in that silence, I finally understood what peace really meant. It wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about making sure it never controlled you again. The days felt longer after they took Clara away. Not in a bad way, just quiet. Like someone had turned down the volume on the chaos that used to follow me everywhere. For the first time in what felt like years, I could walk into town without checking over my shoulder. I could stop by the diner, grab a coffee, and not feel the weight of stares or whispers curling around me like smoke. People had moved on. But I hadn't. Not completely. You don't go through something like that and come out the same. Clara hadn't just broken my heart, she tried to break me. And when that didn't work, she sent Ruth and her thugs, tried to twist the story, tried to make the whole town doubt me. I kept thinking about the old church, the one where I first caught her. The altar. The betrayal. The sacred place she turned into a joke. Sometimes I still walked past it, not to go in, but just to remember. To remind myself how far I'd come from that boy who once thought love could fix anything. One afternoon, I got a call. It was Pastor Rowan again. "She's asking for you," he said. "Clara?" "She's in a mental health facility out in Greenridge. Been stable for a couple weeks now. She says she just wants to talk. I don't owe her anything." "I know you don't. But closure works both ways." I sat on that for a few days. Talked to Natalie about it. She didn't say no. Didn't tell me what to do. She just said, "Make sure if you go, it's for you, not her." So I went. Greenridge wasn't what I expected. It was clean. Peaceful. Nurses smiled. There were no bars or straitjackets, just soft voices and gentle routines. They took me to a room that looked like a library, except all the books were in locked cabinets. Clara was already inside, sitting by the window, wearing a pale blue sweater and staring at the garden like it held all the answers. She turned when I walked in. "Hey," she said. Softly. Like we were still those two kids who used to sneak kisses behind the church piano. I didn't sit. "I read your letters," I said. "I read everything." "Then you know I wasn't well." "That's not an excuse." "I know." She lowered her head. Her hands twisted in her lap like she didn't know what to do with them. "I ruined it all, didn't I?" "You did." She nodded like she expected that answer. Then she looked up again. Her eyes weren't wild like before. They were tired. Maybe even honest. "I really did love you," she whispered. I didn't say anything. Because maybe she did. Or maybe she just loved owning me. But either way, it didn't matter anymore. "I forgive you," I said, finally. Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't trying to be kind. I wasn't doing it for her. I was doing it for me. To end the last chapter. To leave this room lighter than I walked in. "But I won't ever forget," I added. "And I won't come back." She nodded again. And that was the end of it. I drove home in silence. No music. No distractions. Just the hum of the tires and the open road. When I got to my porch, Natalie was there, barefoot, curled up in my chair with a book in her hand and sweet tea on the table. "You went," she said. I nodded. Sat down beside her. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. She just reached over, laced her fingers with mine, and leaned her head against my shoulder. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in orange and gold. For the first time in forever, I felt full again. Not because I'd gotten revenge. Not because I'd won. But because I'd let go. Months passed. Seasons changed like pages turning in a book I didn't want to reread. Winter melted into spring, and with it, the last icy grip of Clara's betrayal finally thawed. I started smiling more. Laughing easier. Folks around town stopped giving me those half-sympathetic, half-curious glances. I guess even small-town memories have an expiration date. That church scandal, the brawl, the whispers, it all faded into something folks didn't bring up anymore. Not because they forgot. But because they could finally tell I'd moved on. And maybe, just maybe, they respected that. I didn't visit the church again. I let it be what it was, just a place. 4 walls and a roof. The real damage had never been the building. It had been the lies, the trust broken in that sacred silence, the way Clara twisted love into control, into something violent and desperate. But she was gone now. Still locked up in Greenridge, as far as I knew. Pastor Rowan said she was doing better. She was drawing again. Reading. Living quietly. I wished her well. I just didn't want her back in my life. One summer morning, I woke up before dawn. Couldn't sleep. I slipped out of bed without waking Natalie, brewed some coffee, and stepped out onto the porch. The sky was still purple and blue, the first light stretching thin across the trees. That old peace was settling back in, like a long-lost friend. And I realized something. This whole time, I thought Clara had taken something from me. My pride. My heart. My future. But all she'd really done was pause it. Put it on hold. What I thought was the end of my world was just a bad chapter in a story still being written. Natalie stirred inside, probably noticed I was gone. She came out wrapped in my old hoodie, rubbing her eyes and yawning. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked, settling beside me. "Nah. Too much thinking." "Dangerous for a guy like you," she teased, nudging my side. I chuckled. "Hey, I've had worse ideas." We sat there, the two of us watching the sunrise, sipping coffee. The quiet between us wasn't heavy like it had been with Clara. It was easy. Peaceful. I'm proud of you, she said suddenly. I blinked. For what? For walking away. For forgiving. For not letting what happened turn you into someone bitter. I didn't say anything at first. Just stared out at the sky. I'm proud of you too, I finally said. For staying. For seeing me when I didn't even recognize myself anymore. She smiled, leaned her head against my shoulder. I thought revenge would feel better. But this? This slow, honest healing, this life I was building, it was so much sweeter. No more lies. No more bruises or blame. Just honest work, long drives, cold beer, and Natalie's laughter echoing through the house we were slowly fixing up together. One Sunday, I found myself walking past the old church again. The doors were boarded up now. Ivy crept along the stone. It stood there, quiet and empty, no more sermons, no more secrets. I tipped my cap to it, like you might to an old rival, and kept walking. I didn't need closure anymore. I had something better. I had peace. And for the first time in a long, long while, I was finally home.